Great. Welcome to Access Denied, the tragic story of 15 million children locked outside the schoolhouse door and how we can fix that. My name is Dirk, and I'll be your host. Today, we'll be talking solutions to the digital divide with key partners in Chicago Connected, learning how they're creating a more equitable and durable internet on-ramp for families. This show chronicles America's digital apartheid, the real-world challenges, the costs and solutions, and how you can help. We just started, but we already have 30,000 plus supporters, including Arne Duncan and Jeb Bush, demanding what should be a basic right, internet for all, that every family that needs it should have free, no strings attached broadband, no strings attached. We can do this, but we need you. Unlike many of the more complex pedagogical issues we face in school, it's not a debate about teaching reading or how to teach teachers teaching reading, how to teach teaching, or how to teach anti-racism teachers and teaching reading, teaching. It's an infrastructure issue. It's one of laying wires and opening hotspots and getting devices in the hands of kids. It's simple and it's fixable. And unlike these philosophical debates, this is really about even allowing children in the schoolhouse door, much less what happens when they're there. Attending school is a right, and solving this is really only a matter of will and creativity. It's not brain science. It's laying cables and giving kids devices and hotspots. Last week, we looked at the real problems. This week, it's solutions. But before we get there, I have to say, I really didn't trust it. You hear so much doublespeak in the internet digital divide world where people are patting themselves on the back and kids are unconnected and getting disconnected. So when I heard about Chicago Connected and true free internet and the vision for it and its sustainability, I was looking for those asterisks. We see those asterisks all over this world. The FCC has a Keep America Connected pledge. Almost every broadband company has signed that. Meanwhile, hundreds, if not thousands, tens of thousands of Americans are being disconnected. And there's 15 million students that are unconnected. So we're not keeping them connected and we're not getting them connected. So what does that mean? What value is that pledge to us? In Oakland, we have Oakland Undivided, where we promise free or low cost internet to students. Half of Oakland families couldn't pay their bills before COVID. How are they going to pay for internet after COVID? So you're making families make a choice between food or getting their kid to school. Is that the choice that America is going to make its low income, most underserved families pay? So it's so much double speak. You find yourself spinning around, thinking this is solved and finding the same exact problems on the ground. But when I saw what was happening in Chicago, it did seem different. It seemed like a legitimate partnership with community, with philanthropy, with the service providers, with the city. And it started with listening to parents about what they really needed in this and the solutions that they need. And so I was amazed to find no asterisks when I read through Chicago Connected, no footnotes where free turned from $10 a month to $20 a month to $30 a month to $40 a month to whatever a cable company defines it as, or free if you don't owe a bill already. I didn't see those. And so I really wanted to come and talk to folks about what they're doing there and how they're doing this. So I wanted to thank the folks from Chicago to come and join us today. We have Daniel Anello, the CEO of Kids First Chicago. We have Philip DeBartolo, the Chief Information Officer from Chicago Public Schools. And we have Claiborne Wade, a family leader from Family Focus Lawndale, a parent liaison. And welcome you all for coming here and really working for our babies and trying to solve this problem. And it seemed like you kind of did solve it. So I'd love to just have you guys introduce yourselves first and tell us a little bit about what brought you to the Chicago Connected table. And then really, you know, tell me about your role within it. And I'd love to start with the Kids First CEO, Daniel, if we could, because I know you guys, you pioneered some of this work.
Sure. And welcome to my garage. I don't currently have a house. So this is the more intimate experience, I guess, for everyone. But I apologize for the backdrop. So for our work is very rooted in kind of working on behalf of parents and families. And so I'm really glad Claiborne's here because his quote, I think, was the first quote that you just put up. But and this is how our work is always kind of operated, is that we've always really spent a lot of time reaching out to families and communities that we serve and trying to understand what are the things that they want to see addressed or fixed in the system, recognizing that they are the ultimate end user of public schools and they should have a voice in that. And so just like any other kind of body of work that we've done, we started with conversations immediately following kind of the shutdown here in Chicago. And we heard a host of things that families were confronted with, whether it was them directly or their neighbors. And folks like Claiborne were really instrumental in kind of pointing out the need for basic things like making the rent at the end of the month, and embedded within that, parents can walk and chew gum at the same time, and they were thinking about their kids' education. One of the number one issues we heard about was a lack of connectivity to the internet. I think we want to make sure that we're looking to see how big of an issue that really is, and that's where our brief kind of came out, which is where you see some of the stats you have up now. We looked at census data just to understand the scale of the issue and saw that it was it was really polar. So certain communities that we identified, 1 in 2 households were not connected to the internet, and the expansiveness of it across Chicago was pretty significant. And from there, conversations with internet service providers and others around what recommendations might there be to actually solve this. And I think you highlighted it pretty obvious. This is one of those issues that we can solve. And not only that, we have to, given the new world. And the price tag for it was not something that, it's not like trying to solve hunger or poverty or climate. We actually can quantify what we need to do and then optimize that. And so, that's where we started with it. We released the brief, and, all along this process, Claiborne and other parents have been really, really instrumental in kind of shaping from our vantage point, like what some aspects of this need to look like. And then the partnership with the district and Chicago Public Schools, particularly with people like Phil, was incredibly important to putting together a really robust plan, which I know Phil can probably highlight all of the different elements of that better than anyone. And hopefully we'll get there. But that's how we came to the table.
That's great. And one thing I really want to commend you guys on is doing phone surveys on this. I know that's more onerous. But I just think it's ridiculous. We've had a bunch of internet surveys about internet connectivity. And so it's like, oh, things are going really well because I'm connected, obviously, if I'm answering the survey. And so it's so misleading when we do these kind of, it's like calling people with landlines and saying everyone who answered that we had landline answered. And so everyone has landlines. Like the selection bias cuts out the families that really need it, who don't ever answer that survey. We never hear from them. So I appreciate that. And I'd love to hear from Claiborne a little bit tell me about your role in this and how you got involved, how parents are experiencing this. I'd love to hear some of your perspective as the person, y'all are why we're all here today. I think you're on mute, brother.
There we go.
There we go.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I can't, I think Daniel said it best, but I also believe that there are power in numbers, and especially when we have our parents sticking up for issues that are, plaguing our community. I think that, that can take us very, very far.
Yeah.
I also saw how with our children, Black and brown, on the west side and the south side of the city of Chicago, have access to the internet, it will take them far. It also gives them a chance at life. And when we have the internet, without trying to figure out, if the parent can pay for it or not, at their fingertip, it's going to, give them a brighter future.
Yeah. Appreciate that. And I'd love for me to hear a little bit about your role, Philip, in this. Here's the numbers, and I've been to Chicago. I can only guess who lives in West Englewood and Englewood. And I can only guess who lives in those little areas that are white in downtown Chicago to where everyone has access. And so just look, and these maps are the same everywhere. Like the redlining maps almost align perfectly with where internet exists right now. And so this is a historical problem that the beauty of what you guys are doing to me is you're solving it. You're going to come out of COVID with a better infrastructure for families. It's more equitable and more durable than you went into it with. And that's amazing to me. So Philip, I'd love to hear a little bit about how it's a very large district, and nothing against districts often are challenging to move in because of the size and the interests, and a lot of things can stop things from happening. How did Chicago public schools move so fast on this?
Well, I think some would argue that we didn't move fast enough.
I appreciate
that. The sense of urgency here is real. The approach that we took, at Chicago Public Schools, really, it starts from the top. Dr. Jackson very much expects all of her leaders to embrace what we call the voice of the customer, and make sure that we're doing right by our constituents, our students, our parents, our teachers and staff. So, with that as kind of preamble, the initial focus for us after we closed COVID was to actually get devices into the hands of students, knowing that was probably an easier lift because we had a significant existing fleet of mobile devices to use. So we consider that as the first thing that we needed to do. And, in the ensuing months, got about 128,000 devices out the door, mostly due to the very hard work of our local school principals. In addition to that, though, however, the refrain that we continued to hear was, well, it's great that you gave me a Chromebook, but I can't do anything with it because I don't have the connectivity. So these conversations were happening in parallel to all the great work that Daniel was doing in the community to kind of help raise that up to a higher level with higher visibility. What we did as a first step was we secured hotspots for our 12,000 students in temporary living situations, knowing full well that any of the traditional, wired means were going to be difficult, knowing full well that, their living situations were in flux. Yeah. So we were able to distribute a good number of those. But right about the same time, we read Daniel's paper, and, when the CIO, called me up and said, hey, I know we've been trying to conquer this problem for a long time. I think the time is right. We've got, a willingness to do it here. We've got some great community partners. And, we're looked around and saw that other cities had started to move in this direction. And knowing that there's no shame in walking through a door that someone opens for you, we kind of looked at those models and decided, hey, there's some really good stuff here, but we think we can tweak it a little bit, right? Increase the community-based organization as the connective fiber between a CPS and the city, or the ISPs and households, because quite frankly, the biggest problem we have, and you talked about it at the outset, Dirk, is trust, right? Sounds too good to be true, must be too good to be true. And that is actually why the CBO component, we think, could be a game changer for us, because you offer someone something for free, they're looking for the fine print, no matter what. And I think that is I think it's fair to be guarded, because the communities that we're looking to serve have been disaffected for so long and have had those promises come in over and over again, only to have the rug pulled out from under them. So we were terribly excited when we've got, through Daniel and our folks in city leadership, starting with Mayor Lightfoot and, the CFO for the city, Jenny Bennett, making sure that we reached out to philanthropy and told them that, look, there's going to be an increased degree of connective fiber between these agencies and community organizations, such that we feel that we can take what we've seen happening in other areas of the country, maybe improve on it a little bit. I would go so far to say, as though while we think we have a good model, my hope is that through multipliers like yourself, other cities are watching this and can take our model and do even better. And that way, when we see this happening all over, that voice, that legislators are hearing in the back of the room gets louder and louder, and then they have no choice but to do right and really change the way we look at internet in this country.
Yeah, no, that's right on. Like, I do think this is like the laboratories of experiment right now. And we're in this crazy petri dish where we need to do it right now. It's like the vaccine development against the digital divide. Like, all these different cities are trying to develop their own answer to this. And we had a comment come up about Philly, where again, they have a $10 a month program. But often when they have those, again, families can't do that a lot of time, even just that's the reality. And B, a lot of time the speeds are super slow. You get one thing for your 6 kids. It's still like ghetto internet for some families, where other families are just on the high-speed broadband. And the beauty of what I see y'all doing is just there's one standard. Like everybody will be on one thing that's good. Everyone gets on the information superhighway at the same speed, more or less, versus like some neighborhoods get at one speed, other neighborhoods get at others. And as the brother said, Claiborne, the kids need this. This is opportunity. And I'd love to hear a little bit more from a parent perspective too. Like what Philip said, it kind of took a minute to get this all going, and it's still obvious. It's probably not implemented completely right now. So what are parents experiencing right now in Chicago, and the parents that are unconnected? Like, what is that like for families who aren't able to access the broadband or internet?
Well, I think that the pandemic showed us all how we rely on the internet every day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about you all, but when I get up in the morning, I mean, not even out of my bed, I grab my phone, I'm checking the news, I'm checking the weather, social media. And with our children, I think as well, they saw it too, when it was like an on and off switch. It went from learning inside the classrooms to learning at home. Mm-hmm. And when you're home, we didn't have the resource that we need. Either we had the tablets, internet, but we didn't have the internet connect. Mm-hmm. So some kids even experienced doing homework or classwork on the cell phones, and we all know that that's not a suitable way to be doing classwork, homework at home, or even with packets. Bringing the packets home. So it was a learning experience. Anything that goes from on to off, especially due to the pandemic, we had to adjust to it. So it was an experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did you guys get all these partners around the table? Is another question I had. Like it seems like you got philanthropy, you got the big cable providers that are right now, that is the infrastructure in most places, is large cable providers or broadband providers. You got community, and you got the district. So who convened this table, and how did you get to an answer that got free internet? Because I'm not hearing that anywhere really right now. Everywhere it's free or low cost is kind of the $10 a month and internet essential. Like, you guys move beyond that $10 a month. Seems like that's the baseline for what people are saying. We're giving you something. How'd you move beyond that and get to free and tell me the sustainability part a little, if you could?
Yeah, I can start that, and then Phil, if you want to talk sustainability at the end. But I think part of this goes back to what we were sharing before, which is the scale of the problem and the moment in time that the pandemic created, that Claiborne touched on. I think people, like, I can't give enough credit to the amount of empathy I think we're all feeling in this moment. And maybe it's unique, maybe it's not, but it feels like the reaction, the urgency was there. And when we started having conversations early on, I think that there was a little bit of hesitancy around the internet divide issue because people saw it as yet one more thing that we couldn't solve. Mm-hmm. We were able to put numbers to that, as well as, and I cannot say this enough, but voices like Claiborne saying, here's what it looks like, in my backyard. Having Claiborne and others kind of raise their hand and describe that experience, putting that together with just the magnitude of what this was for the city, matters. And so the reaction from philanthropy, the reaction from, the city and others was once we had like a roadmap for what we thought we could do, everybody came to the table, and the collaboration was pretty incredible to watch across all of these organizations. It was, here's the goalposts, and we're all working towards that. And there weren't any politics. It was just, let's get it done. To capture one last piece of what you kind of touched on, it's a sponsored program, right? So philanthropy and the city are essentially picking up the low cost, monthly fee that a household would typically have to pay. Mm-hmm. So it's free because there's a sponsor paying for it on behalf of those households. On the kind of the last piece, I'm gonna pass it off to Phil to kind of talk a little bit about those pieces.
So I wanted to talk really quickly about the philanthropy group, because what I had never experienced before wasn't just philanthropists who were passionate about doing what was right. And that's what we were lucky enough to work with, right? Mr. Griffin, the Crown family, Pritzker Traubert, the Obama Foundation, you had people who really wanted to do with what was right, but they also pushed us. They pushed us to answer the hard questions. They pushed us on questions of policy and prioritization and how we identified households. In that sense, when the folks that are really coming to the table to help fund an initiative ask you to be thoughtful and tell you that that level of thoughtfulness needs to be clearly demonstrated for them to participate, it's a huge piece. Obviously, Mayor Lightfoot, this is something that she lit a fire under, several city agencies to make sure we can make happen. Dr. Jackson as well, again, asking us to follow up on that. I think the key piece for us at the outset, Dirk, was really to figure out how do we identify which households, how do we identify which students. And what we think we've done here that is, somewhat unique is that it's not this first year, and the way we've envisioned this program is we have used a number of indicators to try to serve as a proxy to identify which students are in most need. So, the bedrock of that was looking at the UIC Greater Cities Institute Hardship Index, which, looks at areas in the city and at a household level and looks for things like the level of dependency in a home, children under 18 or people over 65 that don't have jobs, the level of cohabitation in a home, how many people do you have, federal poverty level, highest level of education for parents. These are very good proxies for the areas in the city that we see are more economically depressed. So we take the socioeconomic geography, and then we look at a student level, right? We look at students that qualify for federal meal programs or Medicaid, and we look at their membership in certain other programs that indicate that they might be a vulnerable group, students in temporary living situations being a perfect example. Yeah. So what we did was we applied some weights and measures and came up with a group of students that we feel has the highest need. And fortuitously, when we ran that algorithm, we kind of did an overlay with the great work that Kids First did, using the census data. And what we saw is these maps converged, and it looked like we were really hitting the right households. So that isn't to say that there aren't, households that, are outside of those areas that aren't in need. But our job is to get to as many of the households in greatest need as quickly as possible. That also begat a second strategic decision for us, which was really to make this predominantly a wired line initiative for those families where last mile wasn't a problem. That's important because using wired line allows us to hit more households. So for all practical purposes, what we're doing is, we're paying for, the low cost internet program on behalf of households. And, our ability to roll out quickly where folks have wired line at $10 a month allows us to reach far more households than if we went with, hotspots for every family. That said, in recognition of the fact that a number of our families in need are in areas where last mile wiring is indeed a problem, there's also a hotspot component to this. So, I think what you see here is that we know it has to be multi-channel for this to work, but it's a solvable problem. And I think the ongoing challenge for us is going to be, how does this effort tie into other large city infrastructure initiatives, mesh networking, dark fiber, things like that? So why I'm really encouraged about this is the bedrock is really to your point, Dirk. We see different agencies and we see philanthropy and we see, private companies coming in to solve this problem in multiple layers. And that is why I feel, pretty excited about our prospects for success downstream. Sorry if I talked too long.
No, that was great. We had a question actually, like how do we get other cities? First, I want to commend you on the prioritization piece. Early on, you mentioned how you started with transitional kids, which again, I just think, yes, like we really do need to figure out, like it is going to be a deployment over time, and how do we get it to the kids that need it the most first? And so I really love the thought behind that, and also the idea that philanthropy is pushing you guys in some ways. Like we had a $10 million donation from Twitter to Oakland, but it's not like, I just feel like it's just going to be money spent and we'll be in the same place a year now. Just kids will get internet for a year. But there'll be nothing different when that money's gone, and that money won't be re-upped. And so, but we did have a question. How do we get other cities to act with the same sense of urgency? I don't see other cities, I see a lot of cities talking about the problem, but I don't see them proposing quite a solution like this or a real solution. So how do we get other cities to move on this? And Chicago's a big strapped city. It's not like it's not a rich small city that has a ton of resources and no problems. It's a big city with big city problems, and it has a big city solution to this. So I'd love to hear, how do we get other cities to do this with this urgency?
If it's okay, Dirk, I'll lead on this one and then pass it to Daniel to maybe clean up. And I think the parent voice is the most important here, and maybe be the final cleanup. But if I were to offer advice, the first thing that you need to demonstrate, particularly if you're going to use philanthropy to fund a large part of the initiative, is let philanthropy know that there is actually a structure and a good degree of connective fiber between the organizations that are charged with execution. Right? How are we going to measure? Like, that's a question that your philanthropist will always ask. How do I know that there's a good degree of efficacy around this program? How do I know that when students are using this access, they're going to be using it for the right things? These are all important questions, but demonstrating that we are not a group of disparate organizations and are indeed marching to the same goal with an agreed to structure is key to getting investment. So that's part one. Part two, obviously, you need to have local providers that are willing to play ball. And I can tell you that, we have partnered with a couple of providers that have been fantastic. And I can also tell you that there have been a number of providers that we may additionally work with moving forward that have also been great giving us ideas. So establishing really strong relationships with your ISPs is also important. But really the nexus of all this, and my handoff to Dan, comes into play. How do we organize communities? How do we channel that voice in the most constructive way possible? And using, we're fortuitous in that we have an organization like Kids First that was able to harness that voice and channel it in a way that really helped, kind of push us to get this done. But, I would also say that there needs to be a good degree of humility involved for all parties, dealing with CFOs, CIOs, CEOs, and mayor. And the fact of the matter is, what we've been able to do fairly effectively is, kind of chunk out everybody's swim lane, identify where people need to collaborate. And we've been able to march to that beat thus far. Again, we're very early in, but making sure that there's good structure and agreement. And really the key to that is there have been, not a lot of egos involved here. Everybody's really wrapped in the mission and making sure that we close it out.
That's great. That's great. Other thoughts? I'd love to hear from both y'all too.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much cleanup there, Phil. That was pretty sound. I hadn't thought about I think the mission-driven aspect of the work, and the fact that there weren't egos was critical. I mean, at the end of the day, Phil and I have jobs to work on behalf of people living in these communities that are trying to get access to great education for their kids, and remember that as a big piece. I would say beyond the operationalizing plan, having something that and people who were going to partner with us could look at and say, okay, I could see how this would work. I would say that the report, the brief that we put together with help from families and data, anybody could replicate that, right? It's on. There's no reason Philadelphia, who has kind of said, hey, we need to get on this, couldn't take that model and put together their own plan today. I'm sure that there are internet service providers. I know Comcast was mentioned too, and they're one of the partners with Chicago Connected that are Philadelphia that the conversations could start right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you quantify it, I think people can get their heads around it, right? Like when we're presenting it out as just an issue, it's just one more list of things in this crisis that the pandemic kind of just things started blowing up.
Yeah.
And actually having something tangible you can get your hands around was an important piece of this. And you need something that captures the narratives of the individuals, you know, in our communities with the numbers that quantify how big of an issue it is and what the cost is to fix it. But you know, the sponsored program that we're looking at, you know, I give a shout out to an organization we work with on the West Side, Austin Coming Together. They were working with Comcast to put together a sponsored program in their backyard for Austin residents. And that was where some of the early conversations started.
Okay.
It's like, hey, could you take this to a larger scale was the question for us. But there are community-based organizations right now, I bet, in every city that are trying to do this with the individuals that live there that just need a voice in the process. They just need us to give them the microphone, and then we write down what they tell us. To live by that motto, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Claiborne, because I think kind of capture Phil's point. Like, this doesn't happen unless parents get an opportunity to share just how important it is.
Absolutely. Phil, Dan, I mean, you all pretty much summed it up. I don't want people to think when we say free, I want people to think of it as an investment to our children. And, you know, if we don't have everyone at the table, pastors, community-based organizations, people, constituents, parents, and most importantly, the people that can make everything move is the politicians, our mayors, our governors, with the same common goal. That's the way that we can move everything fast. And I think that when we came up with this idea as a team of the things that we needed, normally things take time and been put on the back burner, but this was like, it was like quick, fast, in a hurry. You know, we understood that, well, everyone at the table understood the need, and it happened right away. So, you know, I commend, you know, the folks at the mayor for, you know, all the hard work that she's done with moving this together, and, you know, of course, the sponsors and everything.
That's great. That's great. No, it's an amazing story. How do you keep it going, I guess, is my question now. You know, there's a lot of things that start strong and then get diluted over time, and maybe lose that, people leave, that passion or mission changes some. How do you keep this going and make it sustainable, and just so this is the thing, so this becomes like running water in Chicago versus something that, you know, some people get and some people don't?
I can step in on that one just to start, Dirk. I think the way to keep this going is by recognizing up front that there is no finish line to the work, right? If we consider that, hey, this is a great project, we got this 4-year program rolling, we're good. Let's just roll it out and continue to maintain and report on it, and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
No, because at the end of the day, we know, and this is a damning statement, but I think it's the whole reason you have this platform. We know that there's still going to be families that are left out in the cold.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can get to 60,000 households, 100,000 families, and it's not enough.
Yeah.
So we have to keep pushing. What's phase 2 look like? What's phase 3 look like? We have to take this into the bloodstream as an operational imperative, as opposed to a set and forget project, and after 4 years we're done, right? I mean, maintaining the momentum, seeing how we can continue to grow, and, you know, possibly affect, you know, larger public policy is really the gold standard for us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, the only piece, and this is more tactical, but I think it's gonna be really important for us to share the testimonials and the voices that are impacted by this, you know, and how it's changed opportunity and connectivity. I think it's really important that, you know, we're focused right now on Chicago Public Schools as kind of the center of this work, but the truth is, like, connecting households with students, and then it connects the whole household.
Thank you.
Means I can fill out my census. That means
Thank
that
you.
now I can apply to, work opportunities, or I can post my resume.
Yeah.
Host of benefits that are actually part of the program that are really kind of instrumental within the community-based organization's role in terms of bringing extra things to the households that are dedicated to the adults there. But to Phil's point, this is a bigger challenge than just households with kids in them. And if we're thinking about a thriving city, like, we have to think, this is something that endures, and it is a public good, and
Yeah.
households that need to be connected than just those with kids.
Yeah. And you really think about it, like, we complain when our internet's slow or gets a little laggy, or like your kids are on and the Zoom freezes. Like, what if you had no freaking internet during this? Like, again, if you want to see a doctor, you do it on the internet. If you apply for a job or unemployment, you do it on the internet. If you want to have contact with people, you do it on the internet to a lot. Like, you are locked out of the American economy. This is the thing I like about Zooms, actually, is you get to see like this other side. Like, I actually really appreciate this about Zooms. And being in people's homes, like, not to be in your home and prying on your life, brother, but I do appreciate that. But it really is. I think about you're locked out of the economy. Like, if Bill Gates was born without a computer and internet access right now, and went his first 10 years without that, he'd be working at a restaurant if he's lucky. Like, that's the reality of it. It's an opportunity to be a part of the economy and really the society. And for those that aren't, you're not a part of that. So it's amazing. And the idea that it's built more, this is like the student part of the jumping off piece to community-wide connectivity. Again, I just think that vision is actually the vision we should be looking at, and thinking about how we come out of this better, and more thoughtful and more equitable, rather than just jumping from lily pad to lily pad, and hoping that somehow we're going to end up on the shore someday. We're kind of getting towards the end of this. I guess, Claiborne, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you. Just like, what advice would you say to parents out there? Like, a lot of the people a lot of my followers are actually parents, and community activists and folks like that. What would you say to them about what should they be doing, or what can they be doing?
Well, all I can say is just keep up the good fight. Recognize the issue that's in your community. Get a team together, and move it. Get a team together, recognize the issue, and come up with a solution, and bring it to the people that can make all this happen. I think here in the city, when we're on the basis of, we have access to the internet. So families were, with this burden off of families who had to pay whatever the amount was, now they don't have to worry about, am my light's going to be on this week? And I think, Dirk, you mentioned this earlier, whether or not, if I can pay for my, health care prescriptions, or putting food on the table. With this here in the city of Chicago, having access to the internet, we don't have to worry about this burden or adding the internet onto already a stressed physical house budget. So, I think this is pretty good. But just keep up the good fight. Keep up the good fight.
Yeah, and we owe that. Again, going to school is compulsory. Like, you can be a truant by not attending school. We force kids to go to school, and then we don't give them a way to get to school. And so I just think the part of it is just ironic that you could be sent to jail for your kid being truant, but yet we won't allow access that your kid can go to school. So that it's really ironic. So I'd love any final thoughts from you all. We usually wrap up around 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I think we're going to run one FCC complaint so you guys can hear just kind of some of the challenges that folks are going through. We like to just share, again, the real voices of families, even though it's a dramatic actor doing it. around that. Can we run that FCC piece before we do our final thoughts, Josh?
My household is a customer of Altus Sudlink in El Dorado, Arkansas. We've got 3 school students here that were using the Wi-Fi until our service was disconnected today. I'm out of a job due to the coronavirus. Our bill is about $120 a month for internet only. On their website, Altus Sudlink boasted of signing the Keep Americans Connected pledge, which apparently was a lie. Can you do anything to help us get back online? We don't have a lot of money, and we put quite a dent in our savings by paying our utility bills. Frankly, I'm just frustrated. Kids are home indefinitely with no internet to do their schoolwork. I'm out of a job until further notice. There's only so many creative dinner dishes you can make out of chicken patties. Money's running out. I mean, can't we get a break here?
Yeah, real complaint to the FCC. There's 1,000 of them that people have actually filed, and there's probably, again, 10,000 that they haven't. Like, what do you guys think when you hear something like that? And the work you guys are doing, again, this will not happen in Chicago to me. But how do you feel when you hear someone respond that's their internet experience?
I mean, I'm not shocked. And I'm not shocked. I'm shocked it's only 1,000 complaints to the FCC. I'm curious.
Filed them, so
okay. I'm curious what the response to these complaints has been, because I think you said something earlier that kind of stuck with me. Well, your truancy comment is an incredible irony, powerful kind of to think about the juxtaposition of those things. But also you said that if Bill Gates grew up without a computer, what would happen? And I would say for years we've had lots of Bill Gates growing up without computers.
Thank you.
And they still are. And the FCC kind of snapped out of whatever stupor, or we start to see this as essential. Going back to your truancy point, we are denying ourselves all the future Bill Gates that are sitting in these in their houses right now, denied access.
Thank you. 100%. Y'all have thoughts on it?
Yeah, upsetting to hear, obviously. And truthfully, I hope that in some respect can be a call to arms to people who are considering public service, right? I think that hearing that the government apparatus isn't working, isn't protecting the small guy, is incredibly disheartening. But like Daniel, I'm unfortunately not surprised to hear it, and I am also very surprised that 1,000 is the number. I would expect to be a lot more. We've talked about a lot of aid packages, and if these cable companies are cutting people off because they can't pay their bills, and maybe we need to think about really re-examining that dynamic. At a federal level. It's what you don't want to hear. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter if you connect, like I said earlier, 1,000 households. It only takes one of those calls to completely, not only, spur you on to do better, but it shows that government needs some improving. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and that is one of our pushes, is just to push the FCC to regulate the broadband companies in a different way. And Claiborne, I'd love, as a parent, again, I'd love your thoughts at just listening to that and what that made you feel and what you think coming out of that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think that, people should be the number one priority for politicians, for elected officials. If you hold those offices without thinking about your constituents, what's the purpose of you being elected? You have to listen to your constituent base. If not, you should consider another job. But you have to listen to your people and who got you there.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. This has been a not inspiring overall look as I've been surveying what's happening in digital divide, and I've read every complaint the FCC got, and this shit'll break your heart. And so to see a city actually kind of doing it the right way, not a $10 fee, not something that just keeps going up, but a sustainable answer where the infrastructure that comes out after it is better than where we was before it. And I love just the partnership, the listening to the parents, putting the voice of the parent front and center in this. And I just want to appreciate you all for the work you're doing. Our babies really need this, and it's not happening like this really in 99% of places. And so it's commendable the work you're doing. I don't know if you have final thoughts that you'd like to share with us. We'd love to hear them. If not, we're happy to keep it moving. Go ahead, Claiborne. I'd love to hear from you, brother.
Thanks for having us. You did a wonderful job with moderating everything. Very good. I think when our Black and brown kids of the West and cities in the West and South Side of the city of Chicago are connected to the internet, their future is 10 times brighter than what it was before. Their chances of becoming business owners, their chances of becoming mayors, and their chances of becoming governors. And as I mentioned before, the next Barack Obama are higher than they ever were before. So I think that as a parent, I want to thank the mayor, the partners who participated in this for making this happen so fast. With our children having the access, this will take them further than they've ever been before. So thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Any other final thoughts from y'all?
Just to thank you. Appreciate the time and giving an opportunity to share, and hopefully we can help some other cities kind of think about how to do this there, because to Claiborne's point, like, we need to connect a lot more than just Chicagoans, and this is what our kids need.
Yeah,
Dirk, if I could just double down on the comment before, I actually think that this type of a platform is that connective fiber. I mean, what you're doing, having us on, you're the multiplier in this. And, I think that, to the extent that, other cities have questions, I know that, we're always, open to have those discussions. Again, it's about empowering other cities, empowering other people to take what you did and maybe even do it better, right? I mean, the more that we can improve that model, we end up in a really great place. And Dirk, you play an invaluable role in that dynamic. And I also wanted to thank you for the time today.
I just really appreciate the work you all are putting in and the ability to showcase some solutions. The internet should not be like, at some point we had like a toilet divide where some people had toilets. At some point we had like an electricity divide. We had a road divide. We had a water divide. Now we have a digital divide. And we closed all those, and we can close this one too. And I love that you all actually have a model to do that listens to parents. And the more I learned, and today I was just like, it's all right. Like, again, I'm sure there's little pieces that aren't kind of rolling out the way you want it, or little challenges, but the design is right. And really trying to think about who do we prioritize and based on need, and then how do we universalize this so that everybody gets it and kind of has equal access afterwards. So I just want to thank you guys. Got to give you. This is my first applause that I've had on the show, but I really do appreciate the work. This is critical, and I'm sure you'll hear from other folks after this around how you did this. I'm sure I'll hear a lot after this around like how you did this, because we're all looking for solutions. It's like the race to the vaccine, and there's a lot of different little factories working on that. But it seems like the factory in Chicago has a pretty good vaccine to the digital divide right now. And so we need to start looking at that harder and copying that. So thank you so much for all the work y'all are doing. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
for
And really, that was